It's really a tool that you can think about like that 20-year veteran who like remembers every job you've ever chased and where that file is, it knows where all the bodies are buried when
Yeah.
it comes to that.
Welcome to Spill the Ink, a podcast by Reputation Inc., where we feature experts in growth and brand visibility for law firms and architecture, engineering, and construction firms. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hi, everyone. I'm Stephen Gallo, your host and the VP of Client Services at Reputation Inc. All right, so every AEC marketer has felt the pull of AI by now, inevitably. We all have, right? But most are using tools that are built for everyone, not necessarily for an industry with SF330s, seller doer workflows, and pursuits that can take months, right? Well, today we're going to talk about slightly different category, but in that same family, pursuit intelligence tools built for AEC. And my guest today is Troy Meyer, Director of Marketing Industry Insights at Kantiv, and an AEC marketing veteran who spent 20 plus years in the industry before joining the company, including a stint as one of its customers. So Troy, welcome to the show. Appreciate you coming on.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, and before we dig in, let's, I guess, clear up something for anyone who might be doing a double take listening, so to speak. Until very recently, Kantiv was Joist AI. Walk us through sort of that rebrand, what changed, what didn't, because it's pretty new news.
Yeah, no, we rebranded in June of this year. Well, the long story short is we are the same company, the same team, the same people, and the same mission, but the mission is getting bigger. We felt like we outgrew the name. Joist, the structural element that kind of holds things together. And Kantiv is the play on the cantilever, which has a strong foundation, which allows you to reach out into space. And also, when you think about like the .com era, every company was a race to put online or .com in their brand name because it differentiated them. And we felt like AI is kind of at that moment now. It's no longer a feature that really differentiates. It should be kind of table stakes for kind of how we live and work. We've always been AI native. That didn't change. Just because AI is going out of the name doesn't mean that we've changed how we do that. We've built AI from the ground up from day one. We're not slapping AI on top of an old tired platform or anything like that. Still built by AEC professionals for AEC professionals. But we felt like Kantiv really helped put the institutional knowledge and the pursuit intelligence at the forefront instead of just AI, and really describe what we've built to allow kind of marketers really leverage that institutional knowledge to, in reality, do better work, and the bottom line, win better and more work for their firms.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, it's the table stakes now, baseline, like it or not. AI is here and everywhere. But, sort of as I mentioned off the top, it's everywhere, but that can also be overwhelming for some folks who are like, where do I even begin? How does this affect, me and my position, or specifically within the AEC industry? So I guess maybe if we could, let's start at the ground floor. What is a pursuit intelligence tool to begin with?
Yeah, so pursuit intelligence, how kind of we defined it, is the software that kind of is really built around your firm and your firm's institutional knowledge. So when you think about, what is institutional knowledge, it's those past proposals, your past project experience, your people, your resumes, all that history that your firm has, what you've won, what you've lost in the past, and why, and all of those things. And the pursuit intelligence allows you to surface those things, when you need them during writing process, during, the proposal the proposal pressure cooker that proposals are, finding the information when you need it. It's not a writing assistant, it's really your firm's, memory kind of organized around, one thing. That's how can you, win more work and be better and more efficient at your job.
Yeah, because there's so much data, right? It's almost like, how do we get our arms around it and manage it, especially in, in the AEC industry. In some firms, with the number of projects and their portfolios, it gets to be a lot. Yeah.
Exactly. And the data is often siloed a lot of the times or in different systems. And so the ability to put all that stuff together in one place is super powerful. AEC firms, like you said, don't have a shortage of data. That's one
No,
thing we have a ton of. And so being able to access it, though, at the right time, at the right moment, that's where the magic sauce happens.
for sure. For sure. So, okay. So in that case, how is a pursuit intelligence tool like what Kantiv offers different from, let's say, general AI platforms
Yeah.
and tools that some marketers might already be using?
Absolutely. The general AI tools, the LLMs, the chat GPTs, the perplexities, the Geminis, the Claudes, like those are super powerful tools. I use them every day.
Yeah.
But when you think about AI in general, I think we've all learned through prompting and other things that context is really king when it comes to that. And where the knowledge base starts is a huge part of where it ends up from your output perspective. And so being able to ground a tool, not just within AEC, which, Kantiv does, but be able to ground it within AEC, but then also within your firm's knowledge, that's the most powerful part. And there's always the hallucination factor with larger LLMs because it's coming from a knowledge of the world
Right.
where
Yeah.
when you have a platform that's scoped down to your information, it'll be able to give you more defined structured output for you.
Sure, sure. Yeah, more is not always more in some
Yeah.
cases, right? So, yeah, you mentioned that, right? Like some of these tools, they can hallucinate just because of their drawing on so much information, not necessarily exclusive to your firm or your industry. And so, but a lot of times those hallucinations that it may not be getting is stuff that really matters for the AEC industry or be very specific to project types or to the work itself.
Yeah.
So what does that typically look like? What breaks when a firm is trying to maybe lean on a chat GPT or a Claude for this kind of work when maybe it's not the best fit for it?
Yeah, I think kind of how I've thought about it, and whether it's right or wrong, is a generic kind of AI tool is really like that brilliant intern, who's but
Mm.
they've never worked a day at your firm, so they can be super helpful, but sometimes the context is lost. And when you think about something that's specific, like a pursuit intelligence platform like Kantiv, it's really a tool where you can think about like that 20-year veteran who like remembers every job you've ever chased and where that file is, it knows where all the bodies are buried when
Yeah.
it comes to that. And so being able to do that and access that information, that's just the real big difference. I give Chat GPT and Claude like all the kudos because, if you have one clever person who's super tech savvy at your firm, those tools can really help them be force multipliers at the firms. That's how I started, as well, just being curious and interested in it. But when you really think about how firms take it to the next level and really transform from a like foundational level, it takes one more than just like one person who's good at prompting who like stands something up. It really happens when like the organization, adopts a platform that everybody can use that's grounded in that knowledge where they can really kind of take it to the next level, and hopefully, advance their firms beyond just individual contributors who are kind of good at doing those things.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I imagine scaling is a big part of it, right? Because then it's one thing for, like you said, one person to be kind of building workflows and working from here. But if you don't have the whole team, the whole organization sort of reading off the same playbook, if you will,
Yeah.
it kind of defeats the purpose, right? So help me understand, I guess, when a firm implements a pursuit intelligence tool and they do it well, what does that actually look like on the ground? What changes for the marketing team on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that everybody, thinks about is, efficiency, right? So I think tools help you be more efficient and that's kind of table stakes. If it doesn't do that, then, you should move on to something else. But when you think about like what do you do with that efficiency, and I think that's where like the situation changes. Marketers can really change from becoming the people that make it look pretty and like help, put a document together to really become what I feel like marketers got into these things for is really be that strategist, really be the strategic thinking behind like what's going to really make this proposal different, or what's going to make us win. What can we do to best our competition in X, Y, or Z situation? And so I think being able to elevate the marketer to be that strategic thinker versus, like a overhead or, somebody who's a little more on the admin side that puts things together. I think that's where if you do it well, I think that's the direction that you can go. Beyond that, I think, sometimes it's like a quality of life thing. I know I did proposals for 9.5 years, and the burnout is real. It's definitely a pressure cooker environment. I saw a recent, well, maybe it wasn't recent, it was a little older, but an SMPS survey that said 50% of AEC marketers have had changed jobs in the last 2 years, and a lot of that's because of that kind of pressure. So the more that we can help with that and quality of life and engagement is what we're trying to do. I think also just new hires, being able to ramp them up sooner if there's a knowledge base and something that they can query that they know has all the information of everything, they can ramp faster. And I think all those things really kind of add up if you put them all together.
Yeah, and that makes sense. And well, they have that industry veteran, company veteran who can show them where all the bodies are, right?
At any time of night, any time of day.
Very true, right? Well, and speaking of that knowledge transfer process, right, of folks who really understand the context of the company's history, project history. I mean, you've said at the project closeout process that is often where a lot of institutional knowledge can go to die, right? Or it just gets lost in that baton sort of handoff. And that's can lead to, right, as you said, proposals sometimes getting filed and then forgotten because it gets put on a shelf somewhere, and then unless you know to go seek it out. So what does a tool like Kantiv seek to do to change that? I mean, how is it a game changer in that way?
Yeah, like we mentioned earlier, there's no shortage of knowledge and information at AEC firms, but it's how do you bring it all together? And when you think about the closeout process, you put in so much effort into these pursuits, tens, hundreds of thousands of dollars in these pursuits, updating information, finding new information, putting it all together to put your best foot forward to win a pursuit. But unless that knowledge gets back into the system, then it withers and dies out there. And, the awesome thing about, Pursuit Intelligence platform is you can take that, or at least for Kantiv, you can take that final proposal, input it into the system, and then the AI magic happens and is able to kind of extract out all that information, see what's new, what's updated, and update that institutional knowledge automatically. Where before you would have to go through, open up the database, open up that specific field, update that field. And as you can imagine, if you have to do that for, 10, 15 projects that you've updated for that proposal, those 5 resumes that you've done, all of those things add up. And then then you have a backlog of 6 months of closeout that you haven't done, which I know I've had before.
Well, sure. And I know that's can be such a easy, I don't want to say trap to fall in, because I mean, again, there's only so many hours in the day when you have a project pipeline and things naturally come up. That can be hard. Firms just tend to fall behind sometimes because there's so much.
Yes. I mean, it's by the time you submitted a proposal, next time you have the other ones already, you have your kickoff tomorrow. So are you going to spend your time like doing the closeout, or you have to prep for the next one? It's not anybody's fault. I don't think it's kind of part of the nature of the business, but we know that as a software provider that's a pain point. And so what can we do to make that as easy as possible for firms to not lose that institutional knowledge and surface it for the next pursuit and compound that institutional knowledge to make it smarter for after each pursuit?
For sure. You mentioned touched on this a bit before, right? But a lot of firms sometimes, depending on their size too, might hit a certain fork in the road of like, okay, well, can I build something from scratch, or should I buy a system like this? Or it's a bit of the wild west right now, right? And so how should a marketer think through that sort of decision? What are the questions they should be asking?
Yeah, and I think everybody for each firm is unique. You should definitely have that question. We hear that a lot. Can you build it? The first thing I would do is just really be honest with yourself and see what business you're in. Are you're an AEC firm? You're not necessarily a software company. And I think building something like whatever the platform is or tool really means that you own it and maintain it in perpetuity forever. Think about the security features, think about model updates and all of those things. I think the biggest thing is firms underestimate the effort that it takes to build, between making sure things are secure, the models. We know how fast AI is changing. It changes, seems like every week. That person who stands something like that up, what happens if they leave? All of those questions that you kind of need to think about before. And what value do you have in time to market? If you can implement a tool in 90 days, or you can take 9, 12, 18 months to build something, there's value in the time in between those two. And AEC firms, time is money. I don't think the question should be, can you build it? A lot of times you can build something, but do you want to own it, in a perpetuity? But if you are going to build something, I would, challenge those firms to say, do you want to build something, maybe for your customers that provides additional value to them that might actually bring in revenue for you? You solve an issue for your customers versus building something to maybe save, some money in the short term.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And, when they're might be looking at that scenario and say, yeah, because I know for me and our business too, right? It's like, I know there's so much AI can do, but like, it's like almost like another job to build that infrastructure out and learn it and train it and set it up. So for the marketers who might be evaluating tools like Kantiv, right? What are the questions they should be asking when doing their research, to really kind of understand that they're getting what is the best fit for them?
Oh, absolutely. I think the first thing is really start with the problem that you're trying to solve. I think sometimes we fall into the trap of seeing something that's a great tool and awesome, and then try and fit our business for it. And I think that can lead to lack of adoption and challenges. But if you really start with the problem and then figure out what solution can I find to fix this problem, I think people have more success. Also, in real talk, there is no magic bullet.
Yeah.
There's I wish there was one tool that did it all, but that's not where we're at now. But just be realistic about the what you can do, what you can implement, what problems you're trying to solve that are solvable. These are hard problems that we're talking about and trying to solve. That's why they've been problems for this long in the industry.
Right.
And that's why, firms like ours have built these tools, because we see these problems and really want to help fix them. So, when you talk about like, what questions do you want to ask, like vendors or other things, top of mind are, like security of your data, how it's used. Look at the fine print. Don't just take the salesperson's word for it, and realistic. And then make sure that if you do adopt a solution, that when you adopt it, that's day one. That's not you're done with the project.
Right.
To be successful, you have to have training. You have to have an implementation plan. Think about like, who owns that? Is that the vendor that helps with that? What does that look like? Is there added implementation costs, or is those other gotchas that can come up after the fact? And really think about those things before adopting anything.
Yeah. All good questions, and you raise a good point, right? Because say a firm finds and invests in the right tool, what though makes adoption actually stick, right? That's the hard part, to say we've got this, but now we need to get the team on board with engaging and using it. How do you make that happen to avoid it, becoming something that's, that shelfware that kind of, it's like, oh, this is great, and
Yeah.
then sort of sits in the back burner, right? That's not helping anyone.
Yeah. And I think if you do a good, fit from that problem to solution, then that's step one for sure.
Mm.
But like I mentioned, you really have to invest in training, whether that's, carve out somebody's time. So that's, part of their job, or, investing in external resources to help them out. Um, that's where, I fell into this trap when I implemented, formerly Kantiv, formerly Joist AI at my old firm. Is, it was a great tool, but the adoption at first was, rather flat. And so without the training, that was my, learn from hard knocks, is that you have to have the training plan and a way to execute it um, to really make it shine. Um, I think what's key for that for people is really showing the value from day one if you can. A lot of times, especially with all the plethora of tools out there, we fall into the trap of, I tried it, it didn't work, it's dead to me, I'm going to move on. And so, when you're thinking about implementing something at your firms, try not to fall into that trap, to make it as successful as possible and as simple as possible. To, the goal isn't to give people extra work, with the tool, is to make their work better. And I think the final thing is, I think a strong leadership that's really going to push, like, hey, this is how we're doing things now, is super important. A lot of times these tools are really changing the way, like, we do work, and that's, change is not easy. It's hard for people, especially when they've done it for, so long. And so changing mindsets, changing how you work, changing workflows, those are all, change management things that aren't easy to do. But if you have strong leadership that's, hey, this is the way we're doing it, this is the value it brings, and this is why, like, go team behind it, I think you can really have a successful implementation.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a fair point, right? I mean, it is changing so fast, but right, a change is always going to be something to navigate, particularly for, like you said, folks have been maybe doing it a certain way, but the goal here is that efficiency. How can we work smarter, right? And
Yeah.
so, yeah, connecting those dots for sure. Um, well, as we mentioned, kind of off the top, you've been in the AEC industry even before your time at Kantiv, and I know I've seen your team
Mhm.
at SMPS conferences and events, and
Absolutely.
so you've been around the block. I guess what's if there's anything that you've learned in your time and in your experience, any commonly held beliefs or misconceptions in AEC marketing that you would maybe challenge or push back on?
Yeah, I think one thing, I kind of alluded to this earlier and kind of talked about it, but, you know, the belief or the thought that, marketing is a cost center, for the
Mm,
business. And I think as marketers, you know, we're not just the people who, put the documents together. We are a strategic, you know, folks who can really help push the business forward. You know, AEC marketing, proposals, business development, it's all, a team effort. Um, and, um, the proposal team often is the last person to touch that, bid or something that's going to win you millions of dollars. And that's not, a small task. It's a weight
yeah.
as a as a person who's done it, of like, are you sure this is me just sending this?
Right.
um, but we're often the reason, somebody wins or somebody loses. No, there's obviously a myriad of factors of winning or losing a bid or a tender or what have you. But our goal at Cantiv is to really elevate the marketer to be that, get some of that stuff that they have to do out of the way, be more efficient, so that they can really focus on the strategy, so they can put their head up and have some breathing room to really help focus on that strategy that's really going to help win rate and help the proposal better, win themes, all of those things, and be that revenue driver and not overhead. And that's kind of the biggest one for me.
Yeah, no, and that's a good, important one, and a big one. And I think too, it's also about, for in-house marketers, right? How you're thinking about your role yourself and how you're framing it and presenting that to your leadership and what you're bringing to the table. That's a big one, and like you said, is only evolving now as the job is changing, the technology is changing.
Yeah.
And I guess, speaking of evolution, right? I mean, you've talked about pursuit intelligence evolving into marketing intelligence, right? It's the win-loss trends that you might see over time, client preferences, those patterns. As best as you can here with your crystal ball, where do you see that going over the next, I don't know, I almost hesitate to say 5 to 10 years, because I feel like it is changing every day, every week. But maybe broadly, what are you seeing from your seat?
Yeah, maybe 1 year. We'll go 1 year.
Let's do that.
Give me how fast. I feel like AI years are like dog years.
Yes. I think that's fair. Yeah, at the rate we're going.
But yeah, like you mentioned, I think, right now we're in the space of, helping be more efficient, do our jobs better, take some of that rote work out of those things. But, the evolution is definitely to, moving to market or to pursuit intelligence. We have the data about the pursuits. But I think the next level and timeline, I'm not exactly sure, but is figuring out, where we can get to marketing intelligence. So, right now, there's a ton of effort with strategy every year. We all do, strategy planning in November to think about what are our goals for the next year. We think about what clients we want to target, why we want to target them, what's happening in the market, how the trends are happening, all of those things that are, complex questions. But if we can figure out how to surface that kind of information, what clients actually win, that we win with, what clients are our most profitable clients, which clients do we have the best hit rate, win rate on, knowing when to say no, what pursuits to walk away from is sometimes as important as which pursuits to go after. Right now, that's a conglomeration of a report from your CRM, a report from one of the industry organizations, and a report from another tool, and trying to figure out the nexus of where all those things come together. It's definitely an art and a science right now, but I think we can develop that more into a science that's not only grounded in industry knowledge, but really like your firm's knowledge as well. So to be able to surface those things and be able to give you like really data driven like recommendations on what to do as a business, that's hugely powerful. And I think, I don't think we're far away from it. I think we can get there. And I think that's probably the next evolution of kind of where this is going.
Yeah. Yeah, it will be interesting to see how that plays out. But exactly.
And be interested to look back on this conversation and see right or wrong.
Won't hold it against you regardless. But yeah, I mean, it's about making more informed decisions, right? Smarter decisions. But right now, there's just, as we said, there's so much data to parse and to have to organize and manage that. That could be harder to do. So I guess, what one final thought, if you would, you want to leave our listeners with looking ahead in terms of priorities you're seeing, or anything, about Kantiv more broadly as they're kind of considering where we go next in this industry and in this lane?
I'm having fun. I'm sad this is about to end. I think one final thought is, from like an individual perspective for those listeners, don't wait for like permission to move forward for some of these things. I think, which is awesome about this point in time, is that the gap from a novice to an expert is probably as small as it's ever going to be. And it's an opportunity for those who, feel that tug to really take some time, pull your head up out of kind of the daily grind and try and be purposeful to carve out that time to be the expert in AI, in your process, what have you. I know it can be super, beneficial if you do that. It's an awesome way to show your value to the firm. And I believe, truly it's the direction that we're going. As I mentioned, AI is going to be native into everything that we're doing. And so to be an expert in that is, I think, a great move for folks. So to the best of your ability to do that, I think that would be, my final thought for folks is just get the ball rolling and kind of get started.
That's good advice. And for folks who want to just learn more or get in touch with you, learn more about Kantiv, how can they do that?
Yeah, I mean, you can go to kantiv.com, and it has all the information about our platform. There you can sign up for, just launched a monthly newsletter called The Win Theme. You can sign up for that, talk about industry knowledge, talk about AI changes and trends, as well as some thought leadership. You can always find me on LinkedIn as well. And as you mentioned, SMPS, I'm regularly at SMPS events and other places. So you can find us, me and Kantiv there as well.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll have to see you at the next conference here coming up. So,
Yep.
But thank you again for your time, Troy. We've been talking to Troy Meyer of Kantiv. Really appreciate you coming on and having a chat.
Thanks for having me. I had a great time.
Thanks for listening to Spill the Ink, a podcast by Reputation Inc. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.